Welcome to my series of basketball videos where I'll be comparing various NBA grades against each other. I'm doing this because I find that a lot of the basketball videos comparing players on YouTube are too focused on the big names, and sometimes compare players from different positions. For example, lots of people compare Jordan to LeBron and Kobe to Duncan, just because of their similar levels of achievements, but since those players play different positions and have different styles of play, it's not an interesting comparison. In this series, I want to do a comparison not between just more well-known players, but players from days past, in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and even the ABA as well, that most modern fans probably do not have too much knowledge about. Also, as much as possible, I want to compare players that play similar positions and have similar play styles. To me, that's a more interesting and fruitful comparison. I'll be using 6 different metrics to compare each player. The first category is scoring. This category will be defined by each player's career points per game, peak points per game both in the regular season and playoffs, and number of scoring titles. Rebounding. This category will be defined by each player's career rebounds per game, peak rebounds per game both in the regular season and playoffs, and number of rebounding titles. Passing. This category will be defined by each player's career assists per game, peak assists per game both regular season and playoffs, and number of assist titles. Efficiency and advanced metrics. This category will be defined by each player's career true shooting percentage per and win shares per 48, both in the regular season and playoffs. The reason I use true shooting percentage is because it's more fair to guards. Field goal percentage tends to be biased to big men because of their height and play style closer to the basket. I also put in win shares per 48 here because it encompasses efficiency along with other attributes to give you an idea of how many wins a player contributes to his team. Defense. This category will be defined by each player's all defensive selections, defensive win shares, and defensive player of the year awards. The reason I'm not using blocks and steals in this comparison is because I want to compare the achievements of older players that modern fans might not have too much knowledge about, and players in the 1960s and early 1970s do not have steals and blocks tracked. Awards. This category will be defined by All-Star appearances, All-NBA selections, MVPs, Finals MVPs, and championships as the first, second, or third best player. The reason I have to only count championships as a top 3 player on the team is because otherwise you get into the situation where, for example, Robert Horry has 7 rings and Karl Malone has 0. It is not representative of how much better a player is if they weren't a top 3 player on their team contributor to a championship. I know including All-Star selections is a little bit controversial because it's fan voted, but ultimately this is what the Hall of Fame uses in their criteria to induct a player, as unfair as it sounds. Also, I'll be including ABA stats and awards and using them as equivalent to their respective NBA stats and awards. The only one that's different about the ABA is that instead of Finals MVP, they have Playoffs MVP, which honestly is a better idea than Finals MVP since it accounts for the whole playoffs, but just to keep it simple, I'll be referring to the ABA Playoffs MVP as Finals MVP here. Also, no All-NBA third team selections are counted, because All-NBA third teams weren't added until the late 80s, which is unfair to older players. Also, I'm not using any career total stats because that's a longevity thing. For example, no one would say that Karl Malone was a better scorer than Michael Jordan, even though he has more total points. And of course, this is only going to be my opinion from comparing the available metrics, since I have not watched most of these players live, or even been born when some of these players have been playing. And to keep it fair, I'm judging them based on how they did in their own era. No time travel or what if this NBA player played in today's era or the 1960s, none of that. I'll be strictly basing their stats and accomplishments within their own era against that era's competition, which makes the most sense to me. So I hope you guys enjoy this comparison video and hopefully learn something new from it. In the 23rd episode of the series, we take a look at 2 very different and unique all-time power forwards who won championships as vital parts of a dynasty, but had shortened primes and careers due to injury. Kevin McHale was a Boston Celtics legend who is best known for his ridiculous range of offensive post moves and mastery of footwork, and as a key part of the Big Three Celtics dynasty frontline alongside Larry Bird and Robert Parrish. Meanwhile, Big Mac George McGinnis was a bruising athletic freak of nature, a proto-Giannis who was a much less known player because he played most of his prime in the ABA for the Indiana Pacers as a key part of their dynasty. However, he also played for the 76ers as a teammate of Dr. J's as well. These 2 Hall of Famers had very different styles but both had all-time careers, and today we'll be looking at who had the greater career, so let's find out. In the scoring category, it's very interesting because although McGinnis had much better scoring stats on paper, we have to keep in mind that McHale played as a 6-man for half his career. Thus, the numbers are a bit skewed for him. So although McHale's career average is only 17.9 points per game, at his peak in 1987 he was averaging 26.1 points per game and doing it with insane efficiency too. In the playoffs is similar, although his career average is 18.8 points per game, it goes up to 25.4 points per game in 1988. McHale is most well known for his dizzying array of unstoppable post moves, which he called his torture chamber. Once he got going in the paint, it was near impossible to stop him. On the other hand, McGinnis' scoring prowess can't be denied as well, as he averaged 20.2 points per game for his career, peaking at a league-leading 29.8 points per game in 1975, and 20.7 points per game in the playoffs, peaking at a monstrous 32.3 points per game in 1975. This is a very difficult category to judge, as McGinnis definitely had numbers to back up his scoring abilities, but McHale at his peak was just as potent of a scorer. So even though McGinnis' numbers look better on paper, I'll controversially call this category as a tie. In the rebounding category, while McHale was a very capable rebounder, averaging 7.3 rebounds per game for his career and 7.4 rebounds per game for the playoffs, peaking at 9.9 per game in both the regular season and playoffs, McGinnis' athletic ability can't be denied, as he was a fantastic rebounder, averaging 11 rebounds per game for his career, peaking at 15 rebounds per game in 1974, and 11.8 rebounds per game in the playoffs, peaking at an insane center-like 15.9 rebounds per game in 1975. McGinnis was clearly the more athletic player and has the advantage in rebounding here, thus I'll give him the win here. In the passing category, McHale was nicknamed the Black Hole because he rarely ever passed the ball once it got into his era. And the numbers reflect that, as he averaged only 1.7 assists per game for his career, peaking at 2.7 a game in 1987-1988, and 1.6 a game in the playoffs, peaking at 3 per game in 1989. McGinnis, on the other hand, was a very different type of power forward, as he actually pushed the ball up the court and was the main playmaker for the Pacers a lot of the time, as he averaged 3.7 assists per game for his career, peaking at 6.3 assists per game in 1975, and 3.9 assists per game in the playoffs, peaking at a PG like 8.2 assists per game in 1975. McGinnis at his peak was the focal point of the Pacers offense, and the assist numbers reflect it, so this category will also go to McGinnis. In the efficiency category, while both players had the same PER, McHale was the much more efficient player, due in no small part to him being a much more traditional post player, having a much better shooting percentage than McGinnis, while McGinnis is most famous for having a one-handed jump shot. McHale also leads in weight shares for 48 by a good margin, so thus, this category will go to Kevin McHale. In the defense category, McHale was one of the best defenders at his position for his era, earning 6 all-defensive selections compared to none for McGinnis. However, the defensive win shares do show that McGinnis definitely impacted the defensive end, and although I don't usually talk about steals in these videos, it must be noted that McGinnis at his peak was averaging 2.6 steals a game, which is close to the caliber of a Scottie Pippen or John Havlicek. However, despite the defensive win shares and the steals, I still have to give this category to McHale, as the ABA did have all defensive teams, and yet McGinnis did not even make a single one. In the awards category, both players had their fair share of rewards, as both were key parts of a dynasty. McHale is famously part of the Celtics' Big Three frontline, consisting of himself, Larry Bird, and Robert Parrish, and won 3 championships and went to 5 NBA Finals, although I have to mention that in 2 of those championships, McHale was not a top 3 player on the team. In 1981, Bird, Parrish, and Cedric Maxwell outplayed him, and in 1984, Bird, Parrish, and Dennis Johnson contributed more, so only in 1986 was McHale a very prominent factor of a championship team. McGinnis, on the other hand, had a similar amount of All-Star selections, but had much more All-NBA, All-ABA selections, as well as having a League MVP and Finals MVP. He was the top 2 player on both of his Pacers championship squads, and also reached the Finals as clearly the main leader of the Pacers in 1975, as well as another Finals appearance as a secondary star with Dr. J's 76ers in 1977. McGinnis' ABA achievements push him over the top, and this category will definitely go to him. So when all the categories are summed up, McGinnis takes the rebounding, passing, and awards categories, while McHale takes the efficiency and defense categories, with scoring being a tie, giving the win to McGinnis. Kevin McHale is widely recognized as one of the greatest 6 men in NBA history, and when he was a starter, he tortured defenders with his brilliant footwork and enormous repertoire of moves, and was a key part of the 1980s Celtics dynasty. George McGinnis, although lesser known, could be considered a prototype LeBron or prototype Giannis, as he was big, strong, athletic, fast, and had great all-around talent with scoring, rebounding, and distributing, and was a major part of the ABA Pacers dynasty. Unfortunately, both players had shortened careers from injury, and their primes were dominant but short. Who knows if McHale had not broken his foot, or McGinnis had kept his body in shape, what both of these players could have accomplished. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next comparison video.